Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Henderson with eTrac. I appreciate you hopping on our webinar today. We're really excited to have Chris Richter with FloorFound joining us. Chris is a recommerce expert. His company has done great things, helping companies be more efficient with their returns, reach sustainability goals, save money with returns. I'm going to actually let him introduce himself and tell more about FloorFound and how they got started.
Sure. Emily, first of all, thanks for having us. Greetings to you in Georgia. I'm in Austin, Texas. Crazy that we're already bumping up against Thanksgiving and Black Friday and holidays, exciting times. You characterize me as a re-commerce expert, which I certainly appreciate. It's such a new space, right? So I'm an expert in a fairly new area, and an expert is being an operator in the space. So it's good to be here. I'm excited to talk about re-commerce and what it is, the opportunity we believe it represents to tackle some of these challenges around not just one of the most painful problems for e-commerce, but also just the supply chain environment that we're operating in. But part of what we do in line with re-commerce is we handle oversized returns, and so I think we can shed some light on that space as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking about all those topics with you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. So as we get started and go through the presentation, if you have questions, I encourage you to ask. We're hoping to have some time at the end to go over a few with Chris. If we run out of time, maybe Chris can reach out to people or directly to answer some of their questions. So make sure you get those submitted. He's been a wealth of knowledge so far, so I'm sure he'd be happy to clarify any points or elaborate on things. Just ask. So without further ado, to get us started, Chris, what is recommerce and how does it work?
That's a great question. So we call ourselves an end-to-end recommerce platform. Really, if you think about what our purpose is and what I felt very strongly about when we founded the company. So the idea of resale is not a new idea, right? Thrift shops have existed forever. What I think is different and sort of became mainstream as a result of businesses like The RealReal and Poshmark and many others is this idea of bringing that into the digital space and enabling folks to buy secondhand via e-commerce. So that's now become a mainstream reality. And it's sort of been bolstered by the fact that we have a very new type of shopper these days, right? Who not just leads with their wallet, but leads with their values. And they really want to shop disproportionately with, like I was just looking at a Williams-Sonoma scorecard on their green initiative, their sustainability initiatives, and their number was 40%. I've seen numbers as high as 80% of shoppers will pay a premium for brands that are leaning in on sustainability. So we obviously have a conscious consumer these days who wants to support brands that are acting in the interest of sustainability. And so the idea that space would be growing is not new. It's growing at, in fact, about 25 times the rate of new e-commerce. What's new and what I was excited about is I really felt like brands and shippers that are brands were missing out on the big opportunity here. If you look at Poshmark, it's got about a $3 billion market cap. Yet, retailers by and large are still reliant on upstream new sources of inventory, manufacturing a new sofa, whatever it may be, to drive their sales volume. To me, I just felt like brands were missing a big opportunity here to participate in the upside of re-commerce, to do good for their consumers, do good for the planet, and at the same time sort of catch this wave of growth that these other brands like RealReal and Poshmark were seeing. And so that's what we help brands do, is we help them get into the resale business. So literally for our brands, alongside their new full price items. So if you go to one of our brands like a Joybird or a Floyd or a Burrow, you'll see that alongside their new items, they typically have a link that calls out renew or refresh or imperfect or open box or whatever they may call it. And that's what we're powering for them, is this e-commerce site that's typically branded to our brands, where they are selling resale items. And, sort of the other insight that we had was, okay, well, if we want to put brands into the resale business and really to focus on oversized brands, because I felt like that's where the big opportunity is, where do we go get all of that inventory? And so having spent the last 5.5 years as the head of revenue for Convey, where we got to know the eTrac team, or I did, it wasn't lost on me that oversized e-commerce returns was a big problem. So those were pretty easy dots to connect to say, well, what if we can turn this headache, arguably the biggest headache for e-commerce oversized shippers, into an opportunity, which is, we'll help them tackle the COGS and all the challenges around returns at the same time, get into the recommerce business. And so that's what we do today for brands.
Sure. Well, it's a great motive behind it, the sustainability, and you seem like you've done really well. I know that same sustainability conscious consumer could also be a little more price conscious. You help them get into a brand at for an open box price, which is great.
Sure.
So when people think returns, most of the time we think holidays. We got to return all of those gifts we got, that sweater, that couch, whatever it was, that TV. So as we move into the holidays, Black Friday is coming up, it seems like more and more people every year start to return goods earlier, and they return more of what they buy. They almost buy extra with intent to return now. The last data point I saw was like 30% of things are returned. That's a lot. So why is it that high? Why are people returning so much?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think one thing I should clarify is, since we behind the scenes manage all of these returns and operate this marketplace for these brands, we also have our own returns, right? So we see this firsthand. And I think your number, so apparel returns are very, very high, call it 40 to 50%. In the oversized space, I think the interesting thing about our position is that the verticals where we're operating like oversized are the fastest growing in e-commerce. But, historically, they've had pretty conservative returns policies. And so I think they're now feeling the pressure in order to sustain their growth. They have to get a lot more liberal with their return policies. But the problem is the economics don't work. So historically, I would say furniture, e-commerce return is somewhere between 7 to 10%. So not quite as high as apparel, but still meaningful. And one of the things I really want to call out here, and one of our big drivers, is the waste that's created by that is almost unfathomable. So just to give you a sense, e-commerce returns overall represent about 5 billion pounds of landfill waste. And transportation related to e-commerce returns produces about 15 million metric tons of carbon emission pollution every year. So returns is a big problem, not just a big problem from a unit economics point of view, business plan point of view for our clients, but for the planet, right? So that's why returns are such a big deal for us. And I think the irony is, on one hand, returns don't work when you get into oversized space. If you think about the unit economics around returns, picking up a sofa that someone in California wants to return, if you're a client, like one of our clients is based in Detroit, that's operating in Detroit with one returns processing center, which is in Detroit, trying to pick up a sofa or a sectional from a customer in California as a white glove pickup and shipping it across country in this environment to Detroit, the economics don't work, right? The cost of that transportation puts you upside down. The probability of it getting back in one piece is very low. So there's sort of this challenge of, on one hand, brands need to be more liberal and basically offer satisfaction guaranteed, return anything. On the other hand, the economics of the returns don't work. So, but that's why returns are increasing, is that brands, and we do this too, we now offer a satisfaction guarantee. We don't refund the shipping, but within 30 days, you can return one of our items for buyer's remorse. And so I would say, you're going to see returns rates and furniture and these other oversized categories grow because retailers are going to have to move to those kind of policies to sustain it. And that's what's kind of creating the challenge.
Absolutely. So it's affecting sustainability, it's affecting companies' bottom line. So how can companies change that? How are they turning that situation around to make it more sustainable and economical?
Yeah, I mean, you have to target the sort of 5 things that we target. Most brands now have, I mean, in today's day and age, going into 2022, most brands are becoming very sensitive to sustainability. So they have sort of executive sponsorship to go do better here, right? And stop hauling away these returns, stop putting them in landfills. Backing up my earlier point, about a third of landfill content in the country is furniture, right? So especially furniture brands kind of have a charter to go do that. So then how do you realistically do it? I mean, there are really a few things that you have to tackle as a company to do this effectively. The first one is the COGS, right? So the cost of goods sold, you know, the fully loaded burden of trying to bring a return back. And really the only way to do that is very similar to the only way to make the economics of outbound e-commerce work, which is you got to get close to the customers, right? You have to have returns processing centers and warehouses that are close to the consumer, because you have to take down the length of haul for that thing to, that item, whatever it is, a sofa, a sectional, a dining table, a treadmill, to come back. And there are 3 reasons to do that: cost, damage potential, and then the third is environmental, right? Reducing that carbon footprint I talked about. So that's number 1, you have to tackle the COGS. And this is where we've chosen as a company to partner with 3PLs like XPO nationwide. So 90% of our returns that we handle for brands now in the markets where we're picking, and 90% of our returns, which are nationwide, are in markets where we can pick up a sofa or a sectional, and it's just a local move. It's LA to LA, it's San Francisco to San Francisco. So that's goal number 1. You have to bring down the COGS to give yourself a business case to say, okay, it makes sense for me to go pick this up and bring it back. And for us, I can just tell you, like, that cost has gone from a couple of $100s to up to, in some cases, we've seen $500 or $600 or $700 return pickups. You know, no one's going to make a choice, unfortunately, sustainability aside, to bring a sofa back that was a $1,000 sofa if it's going to cost you $500 to bring it back. It's just not going to happen. And so we've now brought that under $100 through our service provider partners that give us the ability to have these returns be a local pickup across the country. So that's sort of challenge number 1 that we help brands tackle head on. You can do this as a brand, but it's hard, right? Because you have to go build the 3PL relationships and make that happen nationwide. I would say the second big piece, which is a huge one right now that I'm sure most of the folks on this webinar are struggling with, is, okay, I just picked up 500 sofas, where am I going to put them, right? So like capacity is the next challenge. And, you know, fortunately, where we have transportation capacity, we also have storage capacity. So it's not just picking these items up locally, but you have to be able to store them pretty close to the point of pickup until they sell again to the next customer in a recommerce model. And so that's the next big challenge, is like, I've got to have a place to put all of this. And as we all know, with the port backups that we're seeing in the major metros like San Francisco, LA, New York, New Jersey, all these locations, it's nearly impossible to get capacity to store items. And so that's another one you have to tackle. And then the last one I'll say is the processing of those when they get back. So trying to get your 3PLs that are already jam-packed and busy to run a standard process for getting a return back, inspecting its condition, and documenting that for you as a standardized process is very hard to do. You can do all of those things, right? But, you know, we've sort of built a model to scale doing that nationwide, so the brands we work with don't have to do that.
That's great. So you basically take that national delivery, that San Diego to Detroit, and you're going to keep that item local. So how does that affect the return for your customer or the recommerce for your customer cost-wise? How are you bringing that back down to make that a more sustainable sale?
Yeah, so it does a few things, right? It definitely brings down the COGS on that return to a place where brands can employ a policy for returns similar to what be competitive and drive more conversion on their websites by employing a you know, kind of no questions asked, 14-day or 30-day return offer. Again, I don't think like when we surveyed and when we thought about what's the industry standard, we didn't feel like for our resales that we're shipping out nationwide that we needed to refund the shipping for the original outbound shipment, but we did feel like we need to offer this sort of no questions asked return policy for the item. So I think, you know, if you're able to sort of achieve what I said in terms of nationwide footprint and scale and process, then you can offer that, which then increases the return rate. But the next challenge you have really is around the SLA for the returns themselves. So we've definitely brought the unit economics down in a way, like I reported earlier, so that you can justify bringing it back. But then the next challenge, and this is the other big stat, which is 89% of shoppers say that if they have a bad returns experience, they're going to abandon a brand. Whereas 98% or so say that if they have a great returns experience, and this is what some of the other, you know, vendors like Narvar and others in the return space learned, which was, hey, a great returns experience guarantees that customer's coming back, right? But you have to deliver a great experience. And so that's where it gets really challenging, is now you have to meet these SLAs for a return experience. And I can, if you're interested, I can share what we feel like those are and what we're seeing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was my next question, is because customer experience is the whole point, right? You're going to make returns easier than ever for them to do it. So how does recommerce help contribute to that customer experience?
Yeah, great point. So, I mean, a couple of things. First of all, the returns experience itself has to be great. And great returns experience means that you're communicative with your customers. Starting with from the point they request a return, the process of you being willing to take it back needs to be easy, but the most immediate thing that impacts the customer experience is, well, how long does it take that carrier to contact me and schedule an appointment to pick it up? And that, you know, I can tell you early on, we were seeing numbers that were up to 10 days, right, for a carrier to actually contact a customer. And it was just unacceptable, right? I think the acceptable SLA window for a customer to be contacted to schedule time to move that sofa or sectional or dining table out of their living room is 2 days or less. And so we're able to scale that nationwide today. To have it actually picked up is 10 days or less. And then I would say to turn it, you know, from the point it's picked up to turn it into a sellable SKU that we can list for sale somewhere needs to be 30 days or less. That's sort of the cycle we're working on, just from a returns experience. So, and then when you think about recommerce and the opportunity about recommerce, so when you turn that into a resale item and now it's being resold under your brand, what we learned, we did a consumer survey, and what we found was just supporting this idea that customers want to buy resale from their brands they trust. The vast majority of shoppers said, I would rather buy resale through the brand I trust than go to a third-party marketplace, or, you know, heaven help us, have to go shop thrift or resell on Facebook Marketplace or things like this, right? And so, but sort of the challenge there is, and the catch-22 there is that when I buy from a brand, I expect this great experience, right? So the shopping experience, the customer service experience, the delivery experience outbound has to feel every bit as good as a new product purchase. And so that means, you know, customers expect 3 to 4 week delivery. They expect to be communicated with regularly. When they buy a recommerce or resale item, they expect to be able to return it if they don't like it. And all that's got to happen very smoothly. And, you know, we're talking about items that have been already handled many times as they were outbound the first time. And so the experience has to be every bit as good the second time they go out for delivery, which is hard.
Yeah, totally understandable. Trying to get a timeline from carriers, they're already short on capacity, getting that appointment scheduled, but 10 days is a long time to have an extra couch in your living room.
Just to be contacted to pick it up, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's frustrating. And you touched a little bit on this with communication, but where do you see companies messing up the recommerce process or the returns process?
The returns process, I mean, it's just, unless you have your own, and we do work with some marketplaces who have chosen to kind of bite the bullet and deploy their own fleets in specific geographic markets. I think there is a trend around that, right? I think one of our clients that just partnered with us has determined that the only way they can be successful with their outbound shipping and their returns is to build their own captive nationwide network. It's just very hard when you have, you know, to scale nationwide in this environment with capacity challenges. You know, no 3PL, no matter their breadth, nationwide is going to perform consistently everywhere. And so it kind of forces you to have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 partners. And it's very hard to manage them all to a standard set of SLAs, right? And so, but there's always this balance of, you know, do you lean in and integrate more closely with the one that has the superior technology and the superior footprint, but then maybe you're vulnerable on price, right? So it's, you know, it's the whole pick 2 or 3. You can't have all 3, better, faster, cheaper, right? Like there's that challenge for sure on the returns front, and it's just a hard management problem to manage that to consistency. I think the key there is we have chosen to have to kind of overcorrect on the customer service side and be available to handle customer service inquiries and turn what could be a negative experience into a positive.
Yeah, fantastic. And you talked a little bit about sustainability earlier, that being an important value for your company and for your customers and their customers who want to shop with a more sustainable minded brand. So do you have any data points about sustainability and recommerce and how they work together?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, as you're seeing on the slide, 81% of consumers we surveyed thought it was really important that the brands they shop have a sustainability practice. You know, I mean, we're very proud that over the course of this year so far, we can calculate we've saved about 100,000 pounds of furniture. We've diverted it from landfills. So that's really, really exciting for us. And what I would say I've observed in the kind of sustainability area here is, I would say when we first started the company a couple of years ago, sustainability was nice and important to talk about, but it really was not the initial driver ever for folks partnering with us, right? They were much more attracted to the incremental revenue that recommerce was going to lead to, or the customer acquisition opportunity, or the COGS savings. But I think that's totally shifted in terms of its priority. If you talk to our clients now, they would put that at the top of the list. Like I would say we have clients who would say they made this decision to partner with FloorFound on the basis of sustainability. So there's definitely a shift. It's hard for me to quantify, but I can tell you that real money is being spent now in support of sustainability policies. Even if there's not, I mean, fortunately in our case, there's just such a robust ROI argument behind what we do, but they're greenlighting initiatives without kind of necessarily doing as much diligence on what the business ROI is going to be on the basis of it's the right thing to do in sustainability. Because they know it's going to attract, you know, and it's not totally altruistic. I mean, it is. I think there is good motive behind that. But again, it goes back to they want to build their customer file. And they know there are segments of shoppers here that are going to buy because of their sustainability practice.
Yeah, I mean, the number that you saved from landfills alone is no small number. So you guys have done a great job with that. And I think recommerce is a great initiative moving forward. And you mentioned earlier the port congestion and supply chain issues. Would you talk a little bit about how having a recommerce plan and infrastructure in place can help save you during times of inventory crisis like we're in now?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's become a pretty important in this environment, kind of this double-sided coin of, on one hand, customers in some cases will tolerate, I mean, they know the market reality. All consumers are pretty savvy, I think, to, hey, we're in kind of a supply chain crisis right now. So I think customers have become a little more patient with 9-month lead times on furniture, and that's what it is, right? Like for a new sofa, there's a large, you know, Lazy Boy, for example. publicly shared that their lead times have now gone to 9 months from 4 to 6 weeks, right? So you have to be an incredibly patient consumer, right, to wait 9 months to receive a sofa. So there's sort of the quick ship benefit of what we do. But on the flip side, we have a number of clients. In fact, one of our clients, timely enough, shifted its whole supply chain to Vietnam right as the pandemic was starting, right? So they used to manufacture and ship everything from North Carolina. So you can't ship returns back to Vietnam, right? And so they had that challenge. I mean, you can, but it's not practical as a business, right? So we just feel like, with container prices up by 5x, I think the latest is a $5,000, what used to be a $5,000 container is now around $25,000. And the backup at the port, you're talking about 10% of your inventory, right? Coming back, being resellable. So we think that's really, really meaningful, right? Our clients are building significant dollar amounts of inventory off of recommerce. And, we believe over time that resale as a percentage of what the brand sell overall can be 50%. And it's not just returns, right? Returns is sort of the first wave of that. But we look at what we call the lifetime value of an item. One of the other favorite things we have to say is, why would anyone sell something once when they can sell it 3 times? So I think through really smart approaches and programs in the future, we're going to expand from turning returns into resale to running buyback programs and trade-in programs, right? Like, let's keep these items in circulation and expand on this area we call the consumer originating supply chain and balance it out, right? Like, sure, your businesses are always going to be driven by the new products that you design and sell, but we think that recommerce can represent significant, it could be the difference to sustaining your sales plan in the current supply chain environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if it's already here and ready to go and you can have it in 2 days, or you can wait 9 months for one to be made, which one are you going to pick, right? Right. So one more question, and then we're going to get into the submitted questions. So you guys listening in, you've got about 2 minutes to submit a question before we get to that part of our program today. What companies do you believe are doing returns right? And if you can't think of a specific company, what attributes or what would the attributes of a company doing it right be?
Yeah, I mean, I think about brands that are embracing sustainability and doing that right overall, and I was just reading, I thought, a really well-written document, kind of scorecard by Williams Sonoma on their sustainability efforts. And it's much more holistic than just keeping returns out of landfills and recommerce, right? I mean, their scorecard went through sourcing ethically sourced materials, fair trade practices, diversion from landfills, all of these things, right? So I think brands that are really doing it right and hold themselves accountable, right? Like, what I really appreciated is in this document, they very clearly called out on fair trade, on sourcing, eco-friendly sourcing, on diversion from landfills. They graded themselves pretty harshly, like where they succeeded and where they failed. So I think any brand that's being transparent and thinking about this holistically is winning, right? And we hope for our brands, we hope we're part of the solution. And obviously, I would say the brands that are working with us, and we've got quite a solid number, one I'll mention is Joybird, who's is owned by Lazy Boy, but they're a brand that I did a webinar with recently. But what they shared was, again, they mainly greenlit this program. Yes, the economics totally work for them and they see all the other advantages, but they did this because they knew it was the right thing to do from a sustainability point of view.
Sure. No, that would make sense. I love Joybird stuff. We were talking about them before we get started. So to get us started on questions, and I apologize, my bar is a little small, so I might stumble through this a little bit. We had somebody ask, are there other types of consumer-generated supply other than returns for stuff like furniture? I'm assuming they mean apparel, jewelry, apparel and jewelry what come to my mind. I guess it's the woman in me.
Yeah. I think what they may be asking about is, again, and I talked about this briefly, but it's a really important point, which is, if you look at the big picture of, as a percentage of what you sell, how much can be resale? We think that can be a high percentage. Well, as the percentage of the resale inventory, where is it all coming from, right? And, again, we chose to pursue returns as the first opportunity because it was just such a big headache for every brand. And in some cases, it was making their e-commerce business unprofitable, right? So that was the logical place to start. But, where we really see this going in the future is buyback programs, repair refurb programs, upcycling, like true remanufacturing by these brands, and also peer-to-peer marketplaces, right? So, we feel like the brands themselves should be the market maker for their own products for folks that want to sell them back. If you choose to, change your style motif in your living room in 2 years, rather than take it to the corner or have to list it on Facebook Marketplace, if your favorite brand, Floyd, Joybird, Burrow, Crate and Barrel, whoever it was, offered an opportunity for you to list that on their website and they'd take care of everything else, right? They would connect you with the buyers, they would drive the traffic, and then once you sold it, it could be delivered peer-to-peer to the new shopper. Why wouldn't you do that as a brand, right? Because for brands, obviously, it's all about sustaining loyalty and lifetime value. And so that's kind of the other big source that we're just scratching the surface on, is getting these items back directly from the consumers in other ways, including buyback, trade-in, repair, refurb, peer-to-peer marketplace, et cetera.
Yeah, so I think we all have our own Facebook Marketplace horror stories, right? So I'd be much happier to sell that couch back to Pottery Barn than I would to deal with people on there.
Absolutely, and for Pottery Barn, they get a new sale out of it too, right? So, and I can tell you, one of our board members had one of the early marketplaces in fashion, and in many cases, brands don't even have to offer cash for that sofa, just a promotional coupon, right? And it opens up this whole new source of inventory.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so in college, I worked at the university bookstore. So it's the same thing they've been doing for years. They sell a book, overpriced book. They buy the book back for a fraction, they resell the book, and they do that over and over again. We can apply that to pretty much anything. Yes. So we had another question. Oh, how do you explain to your customers the difference between the recommerce items that you're receiving and your full price items that you're selling?
Yeah, so it's really important this is where having executive buy-in, I think one of the interesting things about a recommerce program is, like any other great initiative by any brand, it's a cross-function effort. So recommerce in particular requires operational support, customer care support, marketing support, digital support, and obviously executive support. So we, on this point of cannibalizing your full price brand, it just doesn't show up in the data, right? The reality is that what you're really doing is you're expanding your customer file. This is I think one of the important distinctions is the distinction between recommerce versus clearance. Clearance is designed to target a promotional shopper, and in many cases, as we know, brands produce items to immediately go to clearance to sort of expand their segment to appeal to these promotional buyers. That's actually the opposite of what we see with recommerce, right? The recommerce buyers we see, in fact, our trend is we see that higher priced items with lower discount rates are actually outperforming lower priced items with higher discount rates. So it's not about being promotional, it's about acquiring and attracting a certain segment of customer. And this is a case study we did with one of our clients, Floyd. We found that 75+% of the shoppers that bought from their recommerce program, they call it full cycle, Floyd's full cycle program, were unique buyers with that brand, first time buyers. So to your point earlier, it's creating a lower price point for a new shopper to be able to try, test drive a new brand, right? Which is exciting. The equally exciting point is that within 30 days, 22% of those shoppers came back and bought a full price item from Floyd. So this was clearly a customer acquisition driver for them and helping them build out their customer file. And so that's the kind of data we see is, by and large, the segments of customers that you're attracting here are new to the brand and are really leaning in on this idea of they like what you're doing here in the interest of sustainability. But I think the other point on this, which Joybird made in this webinar we did with them recently, Nora from Joybird, is at the end of the day, does it really even matter, right? The fact is, however you acquire a new customer to the brand, you're acquiring a new customer to the brand. And retail is and has always been the battle for loyalty and lifetime value. And so, ultimately, adding any new customer to your customer file is a valuable thing for the brand, no matter how they got there.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. I mean, your marketing team knows how expensive it is to get a new customer. Might as well get them in that way.
Absolutely.
All right, we have time for just one more question before I will let you get back to your busy day. Onboarding time. So how long is it going to take a company who doesn't have a network set up for recommerce to set one up and to get things moving? Will they be able to do it in time for the holidays this year, or maybe start preparing for next?
Black Friday would be a stretch, but we quote and we deliver on 45 days implementation, and that's to handle our clients' returns nationwide. So we've really optimized for low lift, straightforward deployment. To turn on a program like ours, really all that needs to happen with our brands is we need to get a product file, right? Because we need the product information. That's probably usually, that's typically the long pole in the tent with respect to implementation. But outside of that, it's provide us some marketing content, put a link on the page, train your customer care team to direct these items to us, and you're off into the races. So we can have a nationwide program stood up and launched and live and generating results for brands within 45 days.
Wow, that's really fast. That's
I
awesome.
guarantee I guarantee from firsthand experience, it takes a heck of a lot longer than that to go try to build a nationwide network of returns processing centers and partner with 3PLs and do all of that on your own. Yep.
Oh, for sure. All right. Well, Chris, I really appreciate your time today and all of the information you've shared with us. If you have not, go on LinkedIn. You can find Chris Richter there. You can also find more information about FloorFound and how they work on their website, floorfound.com. Is that it, Chris?
Floorfound.com. We also have floorfound.store as our marketplace. And so, yeah, absolutely. Well, great talking with you, Emily, and thanks for having us, and enjoy your holidays.
Yes, you too. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Take care.